Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Ashok. This video is the fourth part of LWC Live Project Build Your Own Retro Board, where I already have created 3 videos, and in previous video we have covered these points. So there first we have created an Apex method to get all the created boards and added a data table on UI to show them as a list, and also created a button in data table to open board record page, and then we have created a new record page for board object and redirected user on board record page once we click on open board button. Okay, so this is what we have covered in last video, and if you have not watched previous video or any other video of this series till now, then please take link from description and start with first video, else you will not able to complete this project. And if you have already watched and completed all the steps, then you are good to continue. Okay, so now let's have a look on agenda that we will cover today in this video. So today first of all we'll create a new board details LWC component, and after that we will create an Apex method which will take board ID as input and return board sections and section items as response. And once we will receive those sections and their items, then we will start binding sections with add button. And once we will done with this exercise, then we will add our component on record page, and finally we will work on add button to add and save new item under section. Okay, so these all points we will cover today in this video. But if you are new in this video series or have not watched previous parts, then you won't be able to complete these tasks along with me. So before moving ahead with this part, please watch previous parts and complete all the steps which are covered there. And also you will find this code on GitHub. So if you face any kind of issue while implementation, then you can take reference from there, and you can find GitHub repository link in description. Okay, now let's start today's video and create new board details LWC component. And for that, first let's open our project in VS Code, which we have created in first part. Alright, now I'm in my VS Code, and here I already opened Design Retro Board project. Now let's open command plate window by pressing F1 and select Create Lightning Web Component option. And here let's write board detail as component name and press enter, and again press enter. Okay, so we have created new LWC component, and this is the component that we will add in our board record page. And for now, let's start working on next point to create new Apex method to get board sections and their items detail. So let's open board controller Apex class and create new method. Okay, so here in Apex class, we have created new Aura enable method get board details, which takes board ID as input parameter and returns list of board sections. And now if we look into this method, then here we have written a SQL query on board sections object and added board ID in where condition. So it will return only the sections which belongs to this board. And now if we talk about fields, then we are selecting ID, name and items background theme. So these 3 fields we are selecting from board sections object, and here we also want to select section items. And if you remember relationship between board section and section items that we have discussed in first part, then we have master detail relationship between these objects, and their board section is the parent object and board section item is the child object. So now if you want to select section items with section details, then we have to write subquery. I mean in SQL query, if you want to select data from child objects, then we have to write subquery, I mean query into another query. So here if you can see under parenthesis, we have written another query and defined all the required fields like ID, name, description and like count. And here in subquery, we need to remember one thing, that is this relationship name. I mean in subquery, we can't use object name to select related data, here we have to use relationship name with underscore underscore r. So that's why here we have underscore underscore r instead of underscore underscore c. So here r means relationship, and this relationship name you can find in field description. So let me show you this in org, how you can find this relationship name. Okay, now I have opened fields and relationship section of board section item object, which is the child object. And now here you can see our section field, which has master detail relationship with board section. And once we will open it, then here under master detail options, we can see child relationship name. Okay, so whenever we want to select parent and child records in single query, then we have to write this relationship name with underscore underscore r instead of object API name. Now let's come back to our VS Code again. So this is how we will get section and section items details from this query and store that into sections variable, which has list of board section data type, and finally returning that sections from here. It means this apex method will give us section and section item details. Okay, so this is how we are done with apex method. Now to complete next step and show sections on UI, let's call this method in LWC component. And as we have discussed in previous video, here in LWC we have two ways to call apex method, using wire decorator or imperative approach. And here also we want to get data on component load. So let's call this method using wire decorator. Okay, so first of all we have added cacheable true with this apex method, so it can be called through LWC. And now in LWC component we have imported this method using Salesforce apex module, and after that we have called this method using wired method and passed board ID as parameter. And as of now we don't have board ID here in this component, so here we require the board ID on which we have clicked, and we will add this component into record page. So it means we will require record ID here, and in LWC if we want to get current record ID from record page, then simply we can create a record ID property and make it public with API decorator. So now how this will work, if we are adding any component in record page and if that component has public record ID property, then page will set current record ID into record ID property. Okay, so it means we will automatically get current record ID into this record ID property on component load. So now we can pass this record ID property into board ID parameter. And now what we are doing under this method, so as we have discussed in previous video, that once we will call apex method using wire decorator, then as a result we will get two properties, data and error. So first here we are checking that this data property is not null or undefined and also contains at least one item. If yes, then we are assigning data property response into sections array. I mean, we have created a sections array property and assigning apex method response into this. And now here on line number 14, we are checking that is this error property having any value, then simply printing error into console. Okay, so this is how we have called apex method into LWC component and got section details into this section array. And now let's start work on HTML file to show these sections on UI. And before that, let's open our demo implementation again and understand how these sections should be displayed. Okay, now we are in demo implementation, and here let's create new board and provide some dummy values and enter 6 in this number of section field and provide random title to each section. Okay, so once we click on save button, then we have redirected on board record page, and now here you can see in single row we have 4 sections, and each section contains title and add button with icon. And once we click on this add button, then new item is getting created in database and also added under section on UI. Okay, so this is what we will develop now. So let's open our components HTML file and write code to show this section title and add button. Okay, so first of all we have added this lightning card to show background white, and after that we have added lightning layout and added multiple rows attribute. And we have 12 parts of each row in SLDS. So what this attribute will do, it will break our content which will come after 12th part. And under this lightning layout we have added a template tag to iterate over all the sections, and with this template tag we have used for each directive and passed sections array, and in for item we have used section as value. And now under this template tag we have added a lightning layout item and added key attribute and passed section.id, and also added size attribute with 3 value, which means if we divide 12 by 3 then we will get 4. I mean, as I said earlier, we can have 12 part of a row, and if we give 3 parts to each section, then in single row we will see 4 sections, and 5th section will start from next row, and same process will apply till the end. Okay, and now under this layout item we want to show section title and add button in single row. So again we have added another lightning layout and added 2 lightning layout items, one for title which has 10 size and another for button which has 2 size, because button will take small area. Okay, now to show title in medium font size we have used SLDS text heading medium class and bind section.name property, and here in another item added a lightning button icon and provided all the required attributes. So I think now we are done with the basic HTML markup. So let's make changes in meta config file and deploy this component with board controller apex class. Okay, so as we have discussed, we will add this component in record page only. So added record page as target. Now let's deploy this board controller class first, then we will deploy component. Deployment is failed and we are getting an error here. No such column, item background theme on entity. Okay, it should be there, but let's verify in object. I think there we have a spelling mistake. N is missing from here. So as of now, let's use this name. Now deployment is succeed. So let's deploy component as well. Deployment is done. Now let's open our org again and open boards page. And now here let's click on open board button. So now we have redirected on record page, but we can't see anything here. Why? Because we have not added that component on this page. So let's click on this gear icon and select edit page option. And let's add highlight panel first, so we can see page name and board name there. This is a standard component. And now let's add our custom component below this. Okay, now we have added our component on page. So let's click on save, then bake. All right, now we can see our component here on record page, and also we can see sections data like section title and add button. But UI is not so good as we have seen in demo implementation. Like here we don't have padding before title, but you can see here in demo implementation we have enough padding before title, and here we also have border lines to separate the sections, and each section also contains a minimum height. So let's work on design part to improve UI. And if we want to design our web page, then we have to use CSS for that. And now here in LWC we can write CSS in three ways. First, we can write inline CSS, means with the element we can add style attribute and write our CSS, but this is not recommended because in that case our code looks messy and we can't reuse same CSS on another elements, right? For example, let's say I want to add some CSS on this layout item as inline CSS. So for that, what I will do, I will add a style attribute and we'll write our CSS here like background red, okay. But now let's say we want to add same CSS on another element as well, then in another attribute also we have to copy and paste whole CSS with style attribute. So these are the problems with inline CSS. So to overcome these problems, we can create a separate CSS class in component bundle, and class name should be same as component name and extension will be CSS. So let me create a CSS class for this board detail component. Okay, so this is how we can create a CSS class in component. And now here we can define our custom CSS with tags, and also we can create CSS classes and use them into HTML file with elements. So let me create a class and add with layout item. Okay, so I have created a CSS class border section, and if you want to create new CSS class, then first of all you need to add dot and after that class name, and under the curly braces you can define your CSS. So here I have defined min height 200 and finally added this class on layout item. It means our layout item will have 200 minimum height. Okay, so this is how you can define CSS classes in CSS file, and using this class name we can attach this CSS with any element. So it means this same class can be reused at multiple elements. Okay, so this is how CSS class help us to reuse styling, and our code also looks cleaner. But do we need to write custom CSS for everything? Then answer will be no, because LWC natively use SLDS, and SLDS is a styling framework created by Salesforce itself, which contains all the basic required CSS implemented. So wherever we have a requirement to design our components or web page in LWC, then first we need to look for SLDS classes. And how you can find that? Let me show you. So for example, let's say we want to add border in right side of each section, then we can simply find on Google like SLDS border right class and open first link of Lightning Design System website. And here you can see all the details related to border classes with examples, and from here you can copy CSS class name and use in your markup. And now let me copy class for border right and use with layout item. Okay, so this is how first of all we should look for SLDS CSS classes, and if there is a unique requirement that cannot be fulfilled by SLDS classes, then we can create our custom CSS class in component and write custom CSS there. Okay, now let me add some more classes to make that UI better. Okay, so we have added padding attribute with layout item and assigned around a small edge value. So it will show a small padding with whole layout item. And to show border and margin on bottom, we have added these CSS classes. And now to show add button in right side, we have added text align right class. Okay, so now let's redeploy and test it. Alright, now we can see similar UI as we have in our demo implementation. It means we have learned how we can use SLDS classes and how we can create custom CSS file if required, right? And now as a next agenda item, let's start work on this add button to save new section item in database and show on UI. And for that, let's add on-click listener on this button and define handler method. Okay, so we have added on-click listener with add button and defined handler method and also created this handler method in JavaScript file. So now on clicking of this add button, what we wanted to do, we want to save new section item in database and also want to show that on UI, right? So for that, here first of all we require section ID in which we want to add item. And now the question is how we can get that here, because here in JavaScript file, in this sections property we have all the sections. So how we can identify like in which section we want to add new item. So now for that what we can do, we can bind that section ID with button markup as data attribute, and then here in JavaScript file with the help of target dataset property we can get that section ID here. So first let me add section ID data attribute and bind section ID. Okay, so I have added custom data section ID attribute with button and passed section.id means section ID. Now let's write code to read this ID in handler method. Okay, so in this event.target property, we will get our button reference on which we have clicked, and under this dataset property, we can find all the data attributes which we have added on button element, and those attributes we can get in camel case format. So you can notice here in HTML file, we have written here data-section-id, but in JS file, we have written section ID without data. Okay, so this is how we can bind additional data with HTML elements and access them into JavaScript. Now let's work to save item record in database. And as we have discussed in previous parts, if you want to work with Salesforce database from LWC, then first of all we should look a way to achieve that requirement without writing custom code. And for that, we can use LDS in LWC, Lightning Data Services. And in LDS, there are two ways to work with Salesforce data or metadata. First is using record form based components like Lightning Record Edit Form, Lightning Record View Form, and Lightning Record Form. But these forms can mostly help us in simple requirements. And another way is using Lightning UI Record API module. So in this module, we can find multiple methods to work with Salesforce database like get record, create record, update record, and delete record. So to perform CRUD operation without writing custom code, we can use these methods, and we can import these methods from UI Record API module in JavaScript file and use them wherever required. So now in our case, we want to create new record. Once we click on add button, so we can use create record method here. So first let me write the code, then I will explain it to you. Okay, so first of all, I have imported this create record method from Lightning UI Record API module, and after that in add new item click handler method, we have created a fields constant, and added required properties for section item like section and like count. I mean section field is required because we have master detail relationship between these objects. So added section property and assigned section value. And to show 0 initially on UI, we have assigned like count value 0. And as of now, we only want to save these two fields, but if required, we can pass more fields from here. Okay. And here, as we have discussed in previous video, instead of hard-coded field name, we should use hard reference for fields and object. But as of now, for simplicity purpose, I'm not doing that and going with hard-coded values. But in our real applications, we should always follow that approach. Okay. Now in this create record method, we need to pass an object which contains object API name in which we want to insert the data, and also need to pass fields. So we have wrapped these details into another object and passed as input here. Okay. And this create method will return a promise. So to resolve that, we have used await and also use async keyword with method. Okay. So this is how we can create new record in LWC using Lightning UI record APIs. Now here, if you want to get newly created record ID, then that we can get from this ID property, and we have assigned that into fields.id property. So we can use it with like and delete button. And now we want to show this item on UI, and for that, let's add this item in section object. And we have stored all the sections in this sections array. So let's get particular section by this section ID and assign new item. Okay, so this is how using find method we can get particular item from array in JavaScript. And one more method we have seen in previous video, that was filter. So these both methods, filter and find, looks similar, but their return type is different. I mean filter will return multiple records which match criteria, and find will return only one record which first matches the criteria. Okay, so in our case we have used find because we want to get only one record. And now if you remember, we are fetching section items from SQL query as well from here, and we will get those items into board section items R property. So we are adding new item in that array only. So it will be easy to iterate on UI. And when we don't have any item in this section, then we may get this property undefined. So here we have checked it, and if it is null or undefined, then we are initializing it as blank array and finally adding fields object in this property. Okay. But this line will give us an error because we have assigned wired method response in this sections property, and by default wire method response will be read only. So we can't add new item in this object. I mean we can't make changes in this response data, and we are directly assigning this response into this sections property, which means sections property has reference of this response. But now if we want to break this behavior, then we need to make deep copy. Deep copy means we need to break reference of older object and create new object with same properties and data. So our new object will be independent and we can perform any operation on that without impacting original object. Okay. So now the question is how we can make deep copy in JavaScript. Then we can say in this case we can use json.stringify and json.parse. So let me write here. Okay. So what we did here, first of all, we have converted this object into JSON string using json.stringify. I mean this json.stringify method will convert JavaScript object into JSON string. So now our object reference has been removed because we have converted that object into string, and using json.parse we have again converted that string into JavaScript object. So now here in this sections property we will have a fresh object which doesn't has any reference of this wired response. Okay, so this thing you need to keep in mind while working with wired decorator. Okay, now let's quickly deploy this component and test it. Alright, now here let's click on add button. So here we can't see any changes on UI because we have not worked to bind those items on UI till now, and that we will do in next video. But now let's check in the database like new item is created or not, and for that let's use Salesforce inspector and write here query to get data from board section items object. Alright, now we can see one record here, which means our code is working fine. So till now, on clicking of this add button, we have saved new item into database and also assigned that item into sections object. And in next video, we will see how we can bind those items on UI, and we will see how we can perform multiple operations on item. Okay. So I think we have covered all these items today in this video. And in next part, we will cover these items. First of all, we will work on section items to show them on UI. Then we will work to update description in database, and also we will work on like and delete button. Okay. So these all points we will cover in next video. Thank you for watching this video, and if this video helped you to learn something new, then please hit on like or subscribe button, and also share your feedback in comments because that will really help me. Okay. I will see you in next video.